coming up from the Northeast Live Studios in Guwahati. Northeast Tonight with Wasbir Hussain.
Hello and welcome to Northeast Tonight, the show that decodes the region. Once again, there has been some brisk movement in the Naga peace front. The Government of India's interlocutor, Mr. A.K. Mishra, has met leaders of both the NSCNIM and the NNPGs last week. Mishra also took the unprecedented step of visiting Camp Hebron, the NSCNIM headquarters near Dimapur, to pay a courtesy visit to inquire about the health of Mr. Twingalang Muiva. This was, of course, before the formal talks with the two main groups began. Now, the NSCNIM leader, R.S. Raging, has told our channel after the meeting with Mishra that if the government of India decides, the government of India agrees to tackle what he calls the heart of the matter, things could be fast-tracked towards a solution. He said the NSCNIM was trying its level best to convert disagreements to agreements. He said there has been no deadlock or stalemate to the Naga peace process. The NNPCs on its part said they only discussed about the possible modalities of implementing the forthcoming Naga peace agreement and had discussed nothing new because, according to them, the talks were over in October 2019. The big question is, what does the NSCNIM mean by saying a solution can be easily reached if New Delhi was ready to deal with the heart of the matter? What did Mr. Raising actually mean when he said the NSCNIM was trying to convert disagreements to agreements? Was the NSCNIM referring to its core demand of a separate flag and constitution for the Nagas? If the NSCNIM is still not ready for flexibility on these 2 points, can a solution be reached? Was interlocutor Mishra able to achieve a breakthrough with the NSCNIM this time around? To discuss the subject, I am joined from Washington State by a leading Naga academic, Dr. Paul Pimomo, Professor Emeritus at the Washington Central University. From Kohima, I am joined by co-convener of the Global Naga Forum, Ms. Rosemary Zovitsu. I also have Naga Hoho General Secretary Eluandang. And of course, I have with me the General Secretary of the Gaubura Federation, Sikuto Zalipo, to discuss. But before we go ahead with the discussions, let's listen in to what senior NSCNIM leader R.S. Raising had to say after the crucial meeting with interlocutor A.K. Mishra at the Chamukidama police complex.
And we are trying to solve the problem as soon as possible. But if government of India touch the heart of the matters, then this problem can be solved within days or so. But if they do not deal the issue by the root, that drag on the peace process.
There has been much talk over the stalemate of
No.
symbolic issues. So, is there any breakthrough in these two meetings held?
There is no stalemate, there is no deadlock. But we have been talking. We are trying to solve, arrive at any disagreement into agreement. So we are on the job.
All right, we'll also listen to what the NNPG leaders had to say again after the meeting with interlocutor Mishra.
Entire formal dialogue has already been completed since 31st October 2019. This is the third meeting we have been having with A.K. Mishra. So he has already admitted and confirmed our position that the talks has already been concluded. So there was no new agenda that was discussed. Our only discussion was focused on the implementing part of the provisions that is included in the agreement.
Well, Chief Minister Nephew Rio had said a very interesting thing only yesterday. Let's listen into what Chief Minister of Nagaland, Nephew Rio, had to say on the Naga movement.
Earlier at the assembly, you said if we're not accepting for that agreement, then we'll go for fresh mandate. What do you mean by that, sir?
What?
You mentioned about going for a fresh mandate.
No, that is about the Naga movement. My point, what I said was, you see, Naga movement, if to continue, then we should take a fresh mandate to whether to movement should be with arm or violence or non-violence. That mandate the people, because today people want peace, they want development. So I think the voice of the people should be heard loud and clear, because mandate one given cannot be taken forever.
Right. What is this mandate that Mr. Nephew Rio, the Chief Minister, is talking about? One really doesn't know. There is not much of clarity on that. Let's begin the discussions. Let me go straight to you, Ms. Dr. Rosemary Zovitsu, joining me live from Kohima. Dr. Rosemary, there's been a lot of brisk movement in the last couple of days. Once again, we have seen the interlocutor A.K. Mishra in Nagaland. He has started by, taking up that unprecedented move of visiting Camp Hebron, the headquarters of the NSCN-IM, and paying a courtesy visit to Mr. Muiba before actually starting the formal rounds of discussions with the NSCN-IM and the NNPGs. So my first question is, what is your impression? What do you think finally there is some movement, real movement?
Wasbir, the last week I think has been busy and hectic here in Nagaland. And to recollect that almost a year back we were looking at the peace process with excitement. I think this time Mr. Mishra has come down with some very serious ways of listening to both the two groups. There have been a lot of discussions behind closed doors. So we are not only talking of the NNPGs or even the NSCN-IM or even his visit to visit the General Secretary, Mr. Muiva, in Hebron, but there have been closed-door conversations also with certain leaders of civil societies, and there are indications that a government of India is serious and has sent him down on some serious business.
Yes, of course, Rosemary Zovitsu, the advisor of the Naga Mothers Association. Let me go to Washington State, joined by Dr. Paul Pimomo, Professor Emeritus at the Washington Central University and also a senior leader of the Global Naga Forum. Dr. Paul Pimomo, welcome to Northeast Tonight. If you can hear me from a long distance, from the United States, how do you see the situation of late? Do you think, are you optimistic that, this time around, the deadlock is going to be broken, a breakthrough is going to be achieved? What is your sense?
Mr. Hussain, first of all, thank you very much for having me on here. And I'm very glad to be on a panel together with my colleagues. I don't get much chance to talk about these things to our Naga public. So I have prepared a short 2 to 3 minute opening statement on this, and I think they will contain the substance of what I want to say on wonderful topic you have opened today, that is the dynamics and the road ahead. I think it's an important way to talk about the Indo-Naga peace talks. We know the road ahead is not going to walk itself to the desired destination. It is government of India and the Nagas who must walk the road together. There are too many deeply vested interests now, but I think there is a clear and just way to a peaceful resolution. So I'd like to pose for government of India and Indians and Naga negotiators and the Naga people one fundamental question. It has to do with the pivotal human right of self-determination upon which all other rights depend, whether they be political, economic, social, cultural. And the question is this: what is so wrong for the Naga people to want to live together in an undivided ancestral homeland and to govern themselves without an external power imposing its will on them with military force? A homeland where Nagas can build a peaceful and thriving society that is people-centered and ecologically healthy. There is nothing anti-India in this. It is pro-Naga, of course, and it is a noble vision of a people waiting to have a chance to grow and prosper together. So the road ahead must respect this basic right of the Naga people's self-determination. So for a conducive dynamic for the road ahead, it must start with three things. Number one, repeal ASPA, the state-sponsored extrajudicial deadly instrument of repression against the legitimate rights of the Naga people's self-determination. Number two, agree on a timetable for demilitarization of the Naga homeland and the Northeast. That was the real cause of the problems in 1954. Number three, provide for a pathway to an undivided ancestral homeland for the Naga people so they can figure out a way to understand one another better and learn to grow together into a vibrant democratic society that has been denied them by Burma, but especially by the government of India. So that's the way I think about this problem.
Right. I will come back to you. I will come back to you, Dr. Paul Pimomo. I have lot of questions for you, from your opening remark. But let me get the introductory remark from the General Secretary of the Gambara Federation, Mr. Jalipo. Mr. Jalipo, you seem to be having a contrary view. Now, you've heard Dr. Pimomo, you've heard Dr. Paul Pimomo. He said that Nagas must have the right to live together as an undivided nation. So, basically, if I understand, Dr. Pimomo will tell me a little later, but I understand he's talking about the Nagas in the Indian side, Nagas on the Myanmar side. Now, do you think that will be pushing back the issue to square one? Because haven't we bridged some of the differences? Haven't we reduced most of the differences? What is your understanding of the situation? Audio. Okay, okay. Mr. Jalipo, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Let me pose that question to Dr. Pimomo. Dr. Paul, what do you mean when you said that Nagas from both sides should be living together? Aren't we pushing back situation to square one? After all, we have been negotiating for the last 25 years, the government of India and the NSC and IM, and now the decision is to reach a settlement within the ambit of the Indian Constitution.
Oh, Mr. Hussain, I don't think that it is a regression. We have to think of it as a forward movement, because Nagas have not been allowed to really get in touch with each other and to progress together as a people. That was the beginning of the problems. When Nagas expressed our desire to become a people and to unify ourselves into a homeland and a nation, the government of India stepped in. And remember, in 1954, the war started against India, and it did not succeed. And therefore, government of India went to Parliament and had this ASPA enacted. And under cover of ASPA, the government of India the army has been operating at a low-level war against the Naga desire for self-determination and autonomy. So we have not really traveled on that very positive road of Naga unification and integration and self-determination. So it is a forward movement, not a regression. So that's my brief explanation here.
Right. Let me come back to Mr. Jalipu. Mr. Jalipu is back with us. We have his audio, I suppose, now. Yes, Mr. Jalipu, how do you see that a breakthrough is nearing? What do you think of the latest initiative of the interlocutor, Mr. Mishra?
Okay. Thank you, Wasbir. I think you can hear now.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Recently, we can witness that a significant momentum has been taking place between the government of India and the Naga negotiating groups, and also the involvement of facilitators and major stakeholders in a fast-paced manner. The arrival of the Government of India representative A.K. Mishra to Nagaland for the second time and followed by a series of consultations with various Naga apex platforms is a sign, and the Government of India is demonstrating seriousness to resolve the vexed Indo-Naga issue on urgent basis. That's what I feel. Way back to, that is 1954, we have dig and we have post-mortem right from 1929 till then. So, what I feel that arriving of A.K. Mishra, representative of Government of India, will break through this Naga issue. That's what I have confidence on him.
Right. Mr. Jalipu has confidence that Mr. A.K. Mishra, the interlocutor, will be to arrive at a breakthrough. But let me turn once again to Dr. Rosemary Zovitsu. Dr. Rosemary, after the meeting, the senior NSCN-IM leader, Mr. R.S. Raising, had told our channel that if the government of India deals with the heart of the matter, then the issue can be resolved. He also said the NSCN-IM is trying its level best to transform differences into, differences, to reduce the differences, to transform disagreements to agreements. Now, what do you make of these 2 points? What is the heart of the matter, according to NSCN-IM? What are the disagreements that they're trying to convert to agreements? Is Mr. Raising talking about the issue of the flag and the constitution, which the NSCN has clearly stated to be the core issues?
Definitely, Wasbir, because the heart of the matter right now, as the negotiation looks like, is definitely on the flag, the Naga flag, and the constitution. Deliberations definitely must be going on. But you know very well, I think we've discussed many times also, even on your channel, the importance of the Naga flag for the Naga people. The fact that the movement started under the flag, till today we still have the flag. And therefore, one thing that the government of India needs to remember is also that this is a political negotiation. It's not a cultural negotiation. And therefore, to imagine that the flag is going to be a cultural flag or a cultural symbol for the Nagas, I think it's really taking things too far. Definitely the Nagas are looking forward to recognition of the Naga flag, under which decades of deaths and loss has been faced. And if we are to come to a settlement, there has to be a recognition of the flag. And you must remember that the Constitution of India does not have any legal prohibition for any state to have its separate flag. The only thing is that by convention it is expected that all states will have the Indian flag. Otherwise, if you look at Karnataka and the Kannada flag, the red and yellow flag, which is used so frequently, I would not like to think of Kashmir and its flag because these are very different compared to the Naga movement. On the question of the constitution, I think deliberations will continue, and I think that's going to be one of the tough negotiations which is going to happen and has been happening for quite some time.
Now,
But the government of India needs to remember also that all the groups follow the Yazabo. The Yazabo is the constitution which was drafted by the NNC then, and which is followed by all the groups with certain amendments or the other. So I think for many people in mainland India, including the government of India, the very idea that the Nagas are asking for a constitution, which is going to protect our rights, our resources, our culture, our customs and practices, I think it is really unimaginable for them to think that actually the Naga movement has been very structured. The Naga people are actually a very structured, have actually a very structured political system.
right. But Dr. Rosemary, you know, if we take that the heart by heart of the matter, the NSCN is talking about the flag and the constitution. Then again, when they say that we are trying to convert disagreements to agreements, so is he also talking about the flag and the constitution? Is he talking about give and take approach? Is he talking of some kind of a via media, some kind of a middle path?
I wish I could agree with you, Wasbir, but I think if we take it along that line, we may be seeing a break in the ceasefire. And I think this is what we have been telling Mr. Mishra too in the interactions that we've had, that one, we must ensure that there is no break in the ceasefire. And with another break in ceasefire, we do know what's going to happen in the Naga homeland. And I think this is something that India should remember. It is now a part of the United Nations Security Council. It is a part of the HRC, UNHRC, international bodies that have so much of credibility. And you have the rest of the world looking at India as being a country that recognizes and respects human rights. And yet here we are with just Paul had just mentioned about the AFSPA, militarization, no justice for the deaths that have been committed, the massacres that have happened over the years. I think it's endless if you look at the kind of human rights violations that have happened. And therefore, if we are looking towards peace, definitely there has to be an understanding of why the Nagas want militarization to end, of how we want peace, but definitely it has to be a peace with justice. There cannot be a sustainable peace without justice coming for the Nagas.
Let me turn to Ilu Endang, the General Secretary of the Naga Hoho. Ilu Endang, you are also along with, there are a lot of meetings that Mr. Mishra had. You also met him as part of the Naga Hoho delegation. What is the sense you are getting? Now, as Dr. Rosemary has said that, the flag and the constitution continues to be the core issue. And there can be talks on the constitution, but there can be no compromise on the flag. It's not a cultural issue, but it's a political issue. Now, what is the sense you got after meeting with A.K. Mishra?
Thank you, Wasbir. I regret because I could not be part of the discussion in the earlier part. I have a very bad connection this evening. Yes, we had a very fruitful discussion. He has also shared certain difficulties in the process of the talk. But we are made to understand that the recent visit of Mr. A.K. Mishra is to bridge the gap between various political parties and find a middle way, a middle path to come to an agreement where all the groups will participate in the final agreement.
Right. I'm coming to you, Mr. Jallipu. Let me go once again to Paul. Dr. Paul, what according to you is the heart of the matter? I have heard Dr. Rosemary Zouvi, so I can also make a guess as to what is the heart of the matter is. What is the heart of the matter that the NSCN is talking about? And what do you mean, what could the NSCN mean when they say that they are trying to convert disagreements to agreements? Does it mean that we have been able to resolve most of the differences? We have been able to narrow down the differences? How do you look at it?
I am not privy to the ideas and the consultations that I am or any of the groups are having. So I can't speak to that directly. But if you're talking about the heart of the matter, and if for IM it is the flag and the constitution, and as Professor Rose has explained, I think that is a very serious thing for the government of India to have serious and good faith discussion on the subject. It looks as though, from the reports here, from both Mr. Jalibu and Mr. Indangulu, as well as Rose, that A.K. Mishra, the present interlocutor, is more serious than we have seen in some interlocutors in the recent times. In the past, it seems as though that the interlocutor had started a kind of a game between India and the Naga people, represented by the NPGs. Then he started this game with two teams, that is Government of India and Nagas, and then he goes and starts and brings in another team, and then he divides the court, as it were, into two. On one side, we have two Nagas fighting each other, and then he has declared Government of India as the winner. And so it didn't work. There was no serious good faith effort on the part of India, represented by some of the recent interlocutors. But if Government of India is serious in the person of A.K. Mishra, I'm very glad to hear about it. The heart of the matter on the larger level, I don't know, as I said, about IAM and other groups that are negotiating at the table, but the larger heart of the matter is, as I have said, the question of the human right for self-determination for the Nagas. It is, as Rosa said, an internationally recognized and accepted by conventions and international jurisprudence. And India, as a very respectable leader of the world in some of these issues, I think ought to take those seriously. And so what the Nagas are standing for is self-determination from the beginning and consistently.
Right.
Government of India has been resisting and stamping it out, and it has not succeeded. And so we have to solve this in good faith, seriously. And I think I'm still convinced that the three steps are very, very important. Demilitarization, which was the cause of the problem. There are perceived causes of the problem, such as Naga people coming up for self-determination and so on. But that's, as we said, that is a universal right. There cannot be something wrong for a people standing up for their self-determination. It is a universally recognized right of human beings.
Right.
And so that is not the cause of the problem between India and Nagas. It is the introduction of military force.
Right, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Dr. Paul. I'll come back to you. But a lot of people will argue that there will be automatically demilitarization once a peace agreement is signed. I'll take your response on that a little later, but that is one of the point of view. Let me turn to Mr. Jalipu. Mr. Jalipu, I have a straight question for you. Is it pragmatic? Is it realistic? Is it realistic to expect all the Naga groups to speak in one voice? Is it realistic to expect all the Naga groups to speak in one voice?
Okay. And this connection, I want to say that out of 100%, 80% of the population of Nagas are living in the rural area. That's what I want to comment on behalf of the grassroots people. And that's why Nagaland GB Federation village chief, the custodian of Naga villages, also appeal and request the government of India that both the framework agreement of NSNIM and agreed position of NNPG be given equal consideration and work out the common draft, even though the framework agreement and the competencies are still unknown to the Naga population, while the agreed position and its competency has been widely shared to the entire Naga population, as endorsed by the Naga people. Therefore, enough is enough. How many decades is occurred to be solve the Naga political problem? Enough of pleasantry and formalities. Message from the ground is clear for solution. It is people's movement, and therefore, if the government of India have political will, what is government of India waiting for?
Right. Right. If he's talking about the issue, I will come back after a very short break. I'll go straight to Rosemary Zuvitsu for her comments whether it is even feasible to have two accords, because there are two divergent points of view here. One, what Mr. Jalipo has just said, NNPGs are saying that there is nothing to discuss, everything has been settled. October 2019, there is no more talks, we are only talking about the modalities for implementation. As far as the NSC and IM is concerned, the heart of the matter has still not been addressed. So these two divergent views, can there be two accords? Many would say no, there cannot be two accords, there has to be one accord if there has to be a permanent solution. But what is the road ahead? I'll come back after this very short break, go straight to Dr. Rosemary Zuvitsu for her comments on this. Don't go away, I'll be right back. Welcome back. We are discussing how to untie the Naga bind. Let me go straight to Dr. Rosemary Zuvitsu. Dr. Rosemary Zuvitsu, the framework agreement and the agreed positions absolutely poles apart, contrary to each other. Where is the convergence? Do you think there may be a time when the government will have to consider the possibility of signing two agreements? And if that is so, that will be very unfortunate.
Wasbir, I don't think we are looking at a time of having two accords. Definitely there will be one peace accord, and there is a possibility that such an accord can be signed. It will also depend on the leadership who are negotiating, or even those who say that they have finished negotiation. And I think we must not assume that the agreed position and the framework agreement are poles apart. Definitely there will be a lot of commonalities between the two agreements. So perhaps we can look at a time when both the agreements can be studied, and if there is a feasibility of them coming together and exploring ways of where what is best for the Nagas can be accepted, I think we will be looking at one peace accord, and it must happen. I agree with what Mr. Zalipu had said about people in the rural areas. Everyone wants peace. There's no doubt about it, whether it's people in the urban areas, in the rural areas. And I'm very sure even our men in the armed groups are also waiting for peace. And so are their cadres, thousands of them. So I think we are at a very critical stage where the government of India has to be serious.
Yeah.
It should not be left to the politicians themselves.
Absolutely.
I think that is something that is going to be really serious in the days ahead, because The way forward will definitely be everyone taking the Naga people as a whole together, because whether it is Nagas beyond borders, Nagas within borders, definitely both agreements, whatever is going to be brought about, will take cognizance of also the Nagas in Myanmar, who are in another country, but definitely their welfare will also be looked into. I'm very sure about that.
Right, that will require a lot of diplomacy, but that is not impossible considering the stature India enjoys in the international arena. Let me
Exactly.
go to Dr. Paul Pimomo. Dr. Pimomo, aren't you surprised? Aren't you surprised? A lot of people are actually that, when an armed group can enter into a ceasefire and talk with a government that it had fought against earlier. Why can't two Naga rebel groups, why can't the NSCN-IM and the NNPG sit together and trash out their issues, at least discuss, listen directly to each other's point of view instead of going through mediators? Is it so difficult? The church tried, they failed. A lot of people tried, they have not succeeded. What do you think?
Mr. Hussain, that's an excellent question. It should not be difficult. But we have to go back a little bit to find an explanation to why this has become so difficult. We are in a damage control mode. What I mean by that is this. When the government of India and IM decided to sit together and trash out the problems, and they signed a framework agreement, then they should have worked together in such a way that it would expand. The agreement and the discussions would expand systematically to include the other NNPGs and then the Naga public, and that way expand and include everybody. But that is not what happened. What happened was that the interlocutor started one thing and then decided to even fiddle with some of the wordings of the framework agreement, and then went to another group and started another the agreement positions, and so this has really put a spanner on the process. So we are unfortunately in a damage control mode Untying. So the challenge of the road ahead, and you put that very well there in tonight's theme, the road on, the challenge on the road ahead is for government of India to be committed and to really negotiate this in good faith. But first of all, the damage will have to be controlled. And I hope that A.K. Mishra is doing that. I am a bit too far to know the nuances of the developments on the ground. But this is my heartfelt, sincere and honest observation that the rivers or the waters have been muddied too far. And that's why IM and NNPGs cannot come and talk together and agree upon things, because they have been put in an adversarial position with each other. So I guess we are in a difficult situation.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, if they cannot if they cannot even sit together, if they are put in an adversarial position, how are things going to improve? How are both sides going to sign on one piece of paper?
I think, although I don't know all of the competencies and so on, the points in that, Professor Rosemary has said, and she has been following these pretty diligently, there are certain commonalities. And so, as Mr. Racing has been saying, there may be disagreements, not maybe, there really are disagreements. But I suppose that really committed and sincere A.K. Mishra, the interlocutor,
right, and
all of the stakeholders coming together. This is a new chapter. It has got to start on a new road. That's why, so the dynamics has to change.
Right.
That's why I like the theme.
Right.
The dynamics of the journey ahead must change.
Yeah, but let me turn to a slightly different question to Dr. Rosemary Zovitsu. Rose, what could the chief minister again lent a new twist? He said that if no solutions, if the disagreements continue, we'll have to seek a fresh mandate. What fresh mandate is he talking about? Nobody is thinking about him seeking a fresh mandate. That's not what he meant. So what could he possibly have meant? Can you hazard a guess?
Wasbir, I wish you really interviewed the chief minister himself for that statement.
I wish,
Because
I
there are
wish,
many of us.
I wish he agreed to be interviewed. I'm always ready.
I really wish, because, only he would be able to tell us exactly what he means by the fresh mandate. But I think that would be very pessimistic on our part right now, because we have to look forward to a time where we will see better understanding between the groups that are negotiating for peace. And we also need to remember there are still some groups that are on the periphery, that are not within the negotiation. And therefore, if we are looking at a sustainable peace, we also have to think of the groups that have not come inside the negotiation group. To seek a fresh mandate at this point in time, definitely the public want peace. There's no doubt about it. But we cannot, predict of how a continuation of the movement, the political movement, will continue. A lot of it depends, therefore, as I said right at the beginning, it does depend on the government of India. Right now, it's not the armed groups that really have the ball in their court. The ball is in the court of the government of India. And I think the days ahead will also indicate and show us how serious the government of India is to bring about peace within
Right.
these different groups. Yeah.
Right. Let me turn to Mr. Jalipu. Mr. Jalipu, when you hear Dr. Rosemary, for example, just said that there are a lot of groups in the periphery, they also need to join the peace negotiations for a sustainable peace. Yes, if tomorrow, assume that NSC and IM and NNPGs come together, sign an accord, those groups, increase their insurgent activities, and there will be no peace. So that is known to all. But the point is it realistic to wait forever? Can we wait indefinitely for everybody to come together, resolve their differences, and then sign? Because from 1997 to now, it has been a long time already.
Really? In that case, everybody knows that the government of India position is clear and low. That negotiation has already been concluded on 31st October 2019. Okay. Then, time and again, we are requesting our earnest request and appeal that both the NNPG and NSNM not to climb by themselves, that the solution should be only on the basis of framework agreement or agreed position alone. Because the issue and the solution belongs to the people of the people. And therefore, we urge the negotiation party to bring the transparent, acceptable, and honorable solution without further delay to its people. Okay, we have mandate, Nagas have mandate to the negotiator party for sovereignty. But when government of India has dropped out the sovereignty and integration, yes, now looking for solution. So, even way back to 2017, on 3rd August, we Nagas, village chiefs, caste Durians, as meet our Honorable Prime Minister. The Honorable Prime Minister assured still repose our confidence on the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi, and the Honorable Home Minister, Sri Amit Shah.
Right.
And their commitment. Election
Right.
for solution.
Right.
For the 2018. In the event of the government of India tracking on its commitment in bringing the early solution. The GB shall step up any democratic form of agitation. And the government of India alone should take the responsibility.
Right.
If the government has no political will, they should call off. Peace process and negotiation cannot be indefinite at the cost of people's suffering.
Okay, you have made your point. Mr. Jalipo is saying that that negotiations cannot go on indefinitely. I am running totally short of time. Let me go one last time to Paul Pimomo, at least for today's show. Paul, what are your final comments? Isn't it a fact that negotiation cannot go on indefinitely? 25 years is a long time. The Naga youths have suffered a lot. While the world has progressed. You know who knows it better than you, sitting in the United States. The world has progressed while the Nagas have been left behind because of the unrest. Don't you think that negotiations cannot go on indefinitely?
I completely agree that the negotiations cannot go on indefinitely and that we need to resolve this problem as soon as possible, right away, really. Now, but we have to do it properly and justly. If Mr. Jalipo, if I understand him well, and the forces he represents, then going and settling this problem based on what he is saying would be a reinforcement of the historic Naga People's Convention. So we are going back to resolve an issue that will not really resolve that issue. It will be reimposing the problems of the 1960s, that is early 1960s, the creation of the state of Nagaland, onto Nagaland and Naga society. It is not going to solve the problem. Now, I am not affiliated to any group, be it NPGs or political parties. I am only a member of the Global Naga Forum and the Overseas Naga Association, but I am not speaking on their behalf. I'm speaking on my own behalf here. Secondly, so if you go by the agreed positions, then we are going to reinforce the NBC sort of arrangement for the Indo-Naga relations. Now, the other day, the Chief Minister, Mr. Nifio Rio, was talking about a new mandate for Naga nationalism. Yeah. And I think he put it very sort of clearly when he said, the new mandate, is it going to be violent or is it going to be non-violent? I don't know, I haven't spoken to him, but my understanding is he means that it should be non-violent. And I think all the Nagas agree with that.
Yes.
So the road ahead is this. You cannot simply resolve this problem by imposing on the Naga people the Naga People's Convention. Again, that will not solve the problem.
Right.
We cannot also reintroduce Naga nationalism on a violent basis. That is what we are going to trying to resolve. So we go back to the problem.
Right.
The original problem is not Naga peoples wanting self-determination and some autonomy. And in this world, I agree.
Right.
We don't need, Naga people don't need a sovereign Naga nation state. I don't think we need that. It's just my personal opinion. But we don't need that. But we need self-determination to be able to live in peace with ourselves, understand one
Absolutely,
another, grow
absolutely,
together as a
Paul.
people,
It,
and develop our
right.
land and live in peace with ourselves as well as our neighbors.
Right,
So
right. It
that
could
is
not
the
have been.
goal.
It could not have been.
And
It,
so
Paul. It could not have
remove
been
the
more clearer. I'm running short of time, Paul. I'm really apologize. I really apologize to cut you short. It could not have been more clearer than what Dr. Paul Pimomo said, and I would extend my open invitation publicly now to have Paul again on the show as and when I do it. Final 20 seconds to you, Rosemary, for concluding remarks.
Well, Wasbir, the days ahead will show us exactly what's going to happen. But I'm quite positive that even on shows like yours, the government of India is listening, and therefore it is important for them to also listen to civil society, to voices that have followed the peace process, and not only voices of politicians or people who would really like to have peace for their own vested interests. I think at this point of time, we are talking of the Naga public, we are talking of women, we are talking of our youth. There's so much of positivity towards peace. And therefore, the government of India needs to get serious and thrash out the differences. And hopefully, we will have a joint sitting of the groups, hopefully in the near future.
Oh, absolutely. If a rebel group, if an armed rebel group can have talks with a government, why can't two groups representing the same people, that is the represented Nagas, sit together? That is something which a lot of people are asking. But a final word of positivity from Dr. Rosemary Zuvisu, who said that let's all hope that the two groups will sit together very soon, sooner than later, and trace out the differences. Yes, as a government, the government has to walk the extra mile, but the negotiating groups also have a huge responsibility. At the end of the day, they are not representing only themselves, they are representing the Naga youths, the Naga people. That is what is important. We only hope peace prevails in Nagaland, and that should come sooner than later. I thank all my panelists for participating in the show and the viewers for watching the program. Good night and goodbye.